Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are coming from. If someone can just in the chat tell me that they're hearing me okay, that would be amazing. I'm going to play too a little bit, so make sure you can hear that okay as well. Hope everyone's doing well today. So I'm going to get started, and someone can just, yep, A-okay, love it. I love to hear that. Thank you, y'all. So good morning, and we're going to talk about the brain today a little bit and the voice. So yesterday I became an author. I published my book, which is a culmination of 2 years of work for me on this book and many, many more years of study. So I'm going to put the link in the chat here if anyone wants to look at it. So this is a book I wrote about brain-based vocal training. And so the idea of this is that the brain's really in charge of everything, and there's some pretty easy ways for us to assess that and to see if we can make it better. So we need to start today with a couple pieces of gear if you're at home and you can get these. Thank you, everyone, for your congratulations. So a couple things we're going to use in this 20 minutes. We're going to use a pencil or a pen if you have one like this. And then if you have a tissue like this that you can get, neither of these things are essential. You can do it without these if you don't have them, but I'm going to use them in the call. So just if you want to grab those right now, that would be great. So we're going to start by just talking a little bit about how this works for singers versus other kinds of instruments. So if you all take your hands like this and go 1, 2, so to the front and to the back there, there's like a slice of your brain that's in the front here and then right behind that. And so those are called the motor cortex, and then right behind that is called the sensory, or the full word is somatosensory cortex. And so these two places in the brain control movement, and they control how you feel things. And there's a map of your brain there, and all the body parts have a place in this area. And the stuff we use in singing gets a lot of room because it's really important for communication. It's how we stayed alive as a species, through communication. And so we get a lot of brain space for these things. But what's kind of cool is when you watch a singer in what's called an fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging, you'll see that certain parts of the brain light up. And so what happens is when you put me in playing piano here, I'm on my little keyboard, I'm playing like that. So my motor cortex is going to light up. The movements of my fingers are going to go. And what you should know if I'm using my left hand is that it's the right motor cortex that's going to light up. It's opposites. Then if I sing, what's going to light up more is my sensory cortex, my feeling part of the brain. And so we train a little differently than we train to be like a violinist or something. So if anyone on this call is an instrumentalist as well, it's kind of interesting to think about where your brain goes in different things. And singing is a lot about feeling. So we're going to play with that a little bit in this call. The other thing we need to do is what's called assess and reassess. So in the book, I explain this in some depth, but the basic idea is this. There's parts of your brain that are trying to keep you safe. It's called the first brain. It's like our old stuff, like our reptile brain, basically. It's trying to keep you alive. And so when it feels like it's in danger, it's going to tighten you up in some way, including tightening up your throat. So I saw someone wrote, teach me how to belt. So belting is about being able to open up. And so some of that is about these old parts of your brain that you can talk to in indirect ways. So we're going to try some of that today, but let's firstly start by seeing where we are. So I'm going to play on this keyboard a few scales. If you're somewhere where you can sing, great. If you don't want to do these scales, you can just sing a piece of music that you know. It can be anything. But I'm going to do this on an E because E tends to not pop this mic out as much. So I'm going to do E. If you want to sing along with me. E. A couple more. Nice. So we're assessing, we're seeing where our voice is this morning. I purposely did not warm up so we could all kind of do this together and see what's happening. And so that's where my voice felt as I started today. I need to also look at my body because voice and body are basically one thing. So I'm going to do some stuff in this call that's easy to see on this kind of a situation. So I'm going to use my neck. So if I'm going to turn my head one way, and if you all go ahead and try that and turn the other way. So what you should know is your neck should be able to turn to 90 degrees. If you think about crossing the street, right? You go, is everything okay? We do that all through the day to keep ourselves safe. So y'all check your necks and see where you're doing right now. Is your neck able to turn to a full 90? Is one side feeling tighter than the other? And now we're going to do what's called lateral flexion, which is this. Just crack my neck doing that and that, and see how that feels. And then you can take your fingers on your collarbones like this and just make sure you're not going like that, right? This has to stay down. So we're just trying to get our neck, not our shoulders involved in that. And then we are going to check our shoulders as well. So if you take your arm like this, and then you're going to take your other hand across to the end of your clavicle of your collarbone, and then you're just going to go like this. So we're internally and externally rotating. See if your shoulder is cracking or not as you do this. And try the other side. So see if one side is feeling tighter. This is called external rotation and internal rotation. So if you found something that felt a little stiff this morning where you thought, oh, I don't really turn so well to my right, say, you're going to use that as your assess and reassess. So how it's going to work is for the rest of the call, we're going to do some stuff. And then you're going to, I'm going to play the scale again, but you're also going to recheck your range of motion to see if you got better or worse. So there's three possibilities. You're either going to feel freer, you'll feel more open, which we would call a high payoff exercise. It loosens you up, and that's going to help you sing better usually. It's also possible that it will tighten you up, and that's called a rehab drill, meaning that I hit something that my brain's a little scared about, and it tightens me up for a second. It's not something to be worried about, but it's something to notice, to go, oh, weird, I like touched my face in this way, and it actually scared me a little bit. And if you hit a rehab drill, you have to work on that very slowly over the next couple of weeks and try to get your brain a little more comfortable with it. If you're standing when you do it, you can try it seated. If you're seated and you're still getting that, it's called a threat response, you can try it lying down on the floor even, because there's things that scare us. So I have a concussion right here. I walked into the edge of something and I banged up my head pretty bad right there. So I have to work on that area, because if I do the wrong drills for it, it will tighten me up. I'll just show you how this, there's a chapter in the book on scars if anyone has a scar. I'll do a quick demo with myself to show you what happens if I move a scar in the wrong direction. So I have a scar right here, a vertical scar. So I'll show you my range of motion again. If I push on the scar the wrong way, watch what's going to happen to my range of motion. And that's as far as I can turn now. Watch me again without that, right? You can see I can go a lot farther. If I pull the scar the right direction, which for me is this, then I can actually even go farther. So there's weird little things in the body where it's holding on to threat. And so you may hit one of those, and that's okay. You just have to work on it slowly. It's also possible you'll hit what's called a neutral drill, which means it starts and ends in the same place, which we're just going to move past those for the purposes of this call. You're trying to find something that's high payoff, and you may find something that is rehab, depending on how it goes. The last thing I want to say, because we're all in this weird thing about we're having to train ourselves mostly right now. Some of you might be doing Zoom lessons. Some of you probably aren't singing that much. The thing is, you've got to keep doing it because it's a use it or lose it proposition. And you don't want to find yourself in a year going, God, I didn't sing for all of 2020. And now I'm like really behind in terms of what I'm doing. So it is something that I want you to be thinking about, putting yourself through these steps. So with any drill you do, it's 3 steps. It's called cognitive, associative, autonomous. Cognitive, I have to think about it. I have to lift my palate. I have to move my tongue forward. I have to open my ribs. Whatever it is that you're thinking about and you're singing, you have to make it cognitive. Think about it. And then associative means tie it to something you already know. So let's say that you're a yoga person and you're like, I have to move my ribs out. Oh, wait, when I'm in warrior, I kind of feel like I already do that. Could I think of like the warrior feeling while I sang, right? Those are ways to tie it to what you already know, which make things faster. And then autonomous is when everything's just working by itself, which is our goal always in training. So we are going to look at a few things today with this. We're going to start with your face. So if you have a tissue, I want you to grab it. We're going to twist it into a little point like this, like that. So if you got that, there's 3 branches on your face: forehead, cheekbone, jawline. So I'm going to run this tissue along both sides of my forehead like this. 1, 2, to see how that feels. It feels the same on both sides. Here we go. 1, 2. And then along the jaw, 1, 2. Does that all feel the same? If you don't have a tissue, you can just use your finger like this. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So Does it feel the same everywhere? Does anything feel dull? So for me this morning, it's pretty close, but along my scar area here, it's a little less sensitive. So I'm gonna rub along that while I sing. So if you guys found that, yeah, so I see a couple comments here I'll just talk about quickly. Yeah, cognitive associative autonomous. Corinne, thanks for saying that. Yes, and it's someone saying one side is more sensitive or one side is less ticklish. Yeah, so there can be downs, and there can be also be hypersensitivity. So if it's really sensitive and you're like, whoa, that's super a lot, I want you to go on the side that's dull, that feels like it's not doing much. So I'm going to try myself as a guinea pig, and you guys can try it too. So I'm going to work here because that's where I need to work. You may need to work somewhere else, so you do whatever feels less awake to you. I'm going to go across here while I sing. So a little better for me, not in my case a giant difference, but someone saying left cheekbone is less sensitive. Yeah. So this is my experience having done this with easily 1,000 people. There's kind of maps in singing. And so the basic idea is this: chest voice, thick vocal cords. You're going to feel more vibration usually along this branch down here. Good mixed belt qualities usually ring somewhere across this area, across the cheekbone. And head voice is what it sounds like. The vocal cords have thinned out, and you're usually going to start to feel like it's up here or somewhere. So these branches are part of something called the trigeminal nerve, which I'm going to write in the chat here if you want to look that name of that nerve up. Trigeminal, three branches, trigeminal. So I'm going to put the link for my book in here again too. So if you want to read about this more, I go over this in a lot more depth in the book, but this is just a quick little look at that nerve. And so you want to potentially wake it up. So if you've got a pen or a pencil handy, grab it. Make sure that I'm going to use an Apple Pencil. Make sure that if you have like a mechanical pencil, the lead is retracted, so we're going to actually poke it onto your face. So we're going to do the same stuff, but with the tip of the pen or pencil that's a little bit sharp. So just tap on one side and tap on the other side, and then tap on your cheekbone and tap on your cheekbone, tap on your jaw and tap on your jaw. Does that all feel the same? Do you feel the sharpness of that? And then if you got like an eraser on it, you can turn it the other way to the dull side and do the same stuff. Okay, so for me, the sharp over here on my right cheek was a little bit less today. This is a different sense, so you might have different results. I have different results on this today. That feels a little different. So I'm going to tap. I'm going to switch hands so I can play this keyboard, but I'm going to tap this with the sharp side while I sing and see what happens. So I'm tapping right here. Let's do one more. I'm going to recheck my range of motion, so I'm going to do my head to the right. So that is absolutely better for me. So I went further after doing that. Also, my voice felt a little better after that one. So that is a different sense called sharp and dull, different than the light touch feeling that we already did, yeah? So I'm going to move on to a couple other parts of the brain today. So I'm going to talk about our ears a little bit. So we have what's called air conduction and bone conduction. So if you all know Beethoven, Beethoven went deaf. So how he composed was that he put a metal rod in his teeth like this and stuck it in the piano. And then the vibrations went into his teeth, and he could hear through his teeth and through his bones. And that's how he composed when he went deaf. So it's kind of a cool sense to know about a little bit. So we're going to do some testing with ourselves. So the first thing you need to do is if you have this tissue, take it, rub it like this in front of this ear and in front of that ear with the same hand like this. Does one side sound louder? If you don't have a tissue, you can just rub your fingers like this. Is one side stronger on that? So for me, my right side is a little stronger today. So I'm going to rub in front of my left ear. I'm going to rub this tissue because I'm going to be singing. And so I need something that's a little bit louder, like a finger is not going to maybe be loud enough for that. So I'm going to rustle this. If you don't have one, rub a lot of fingers, try to get it loud. But I'm going to rub that while I sing in front of this ear. This is called air conduction. So that was by far the best for me today so far. I felt the freest. Let me check my neck out. So my reassessment was high payoff on that. That was good. I woke up my ear that was a little bit under. So a lot of you on this call are probably actors. What you need to know is this: your right ear is your language ear and your left ear is your music ear because of where the stuff is stored in your brain. We're working on what's called the temporal lobe right now. And the way it works is that the right temporal lobe holds melody and it crosses sides in your brain, 60% to the other side. So it's not all on one side and the other, but there's like a priority for music in your left ear. And then the language is in your left temporal lobe, which crosses to your right ear. So generally, if your right ear is stronger, you may feel very into language and lyrics and that kind of stuff. If your left ear is stronger, you may feel very connected to the musical side of things. So those are things to kind of play around with a little bit, to think about. So I'm going to now have us test a little bit of side to side of amplifying and then turning down our air conduction. So we're going to cup our hand like this around the ear that way. So I'm going to amplify my left ear air conduction, and we're going to sing like that. Switch sides. Same thing. Did that sound the same? Did that feel different in your throat singing like that? So some of you will have had a good assessment from that. Let's turn it up on both sides for a second. Here we go. So I'm going to just do it a cappella because I need both hands here. E, next key here. E. Okay, so that's amplifying air conduction. I see a couple questions that I want to get to quickly. Is the brain physiology the opposite for left-handed people? It is not. I'm a lefty. It's mostly almost entirely the same. There's actually very little difference when you look at brains with left to right-handed people. And if you notice an area that's less sensitive, so this all goes back to assess and reassess. Since I'm not there with you, what you need to think about is, did I feel freer? Did my body get freer? Did my voice get freer when I did the exercise? If it did, then I'm going to do that in my practice. If it didn't, then I'm probably not going to do that side. And that's why voice is so hard to learn by yourself, because it's really very, very different depending on the people. If I could tell y'all, like, this is the exercise everybody should do, that'd be great, but it's not the way humans are. So we do need to have some kind of way to figure out what's going on with ourselves. And that is where assess and reassess comes into it. I need to keep going because we're going to run out of time. So we're now going to turn off our air conduction, which means turn on your bone conduction. So we need to do a quick test with that. So what y'all are going to do is hum, and you're going to plug your ears and release in the middle of humming. So I'm going to hum. And you're going to see if the hum got louder when you plugged your ears, because it should. So go ahead and do that a couple times. Try one side at a time now, like this. Did both sides get louder when you did that? Because they should get louder. You should hear it better when you plug your ears. When you turn off your air conduction, you turn on your bone conduction. So we're going to see how singing like this feels for you, and do one side at a time. You're going to make this kind of a curve with your hand that way, and you're going to go over your ears. So you're going to block off the ear on that side. And we're going to sing like that. Okay, that felt really good for me. It felt actually the best so far. Try the other side. And that felt a little tighter for me personally. So this was what I would do in my own practice. And I can feel, because I do this a lot, my throat going down. So I've seen a couple questions in the chat here about various voice things. Everything in voice gets better if your larynx can be a little bit more down. The high larynx is like the scared body. So having it a little lower in your throat often makes things feel more comfortable. And I can feel that when I go like this, it comes up a little bit. And when I go like that, it drops a bit. And that feels more comfortable for me. So that is just a quick intro into this way of thinking. Just to summarize this call quickly today, a couple things to think about. Your senses count. Face stuff like this. We did the tap onto this area. Your senses matter because that's what singing is. It's about feeling in your body. And then this idea of we have to go through cognitive, associative, autonomous. We got to think about it. Then we got to tie it to something we already know how to do. And then we got to eventually let it go, and let it do its thing by itself. And then the last thing we did was a little bit of our senses of hearing, which are stored in our temporal lobe of the brain. So if you start to play with this idea of I could turn it up, I could turn it down on one side or both sides, what does that do for my connection to my voice, which goes directly from this temporal lobe down into your vocal folds themselves? So it was a great, thanks for being with me today. I really appreciate y'all being here, and I will see you all soon. I'm gonna put the link to my book one more time in here just because, well, why not? Maybe you wanna look at it. So that is the link to the book, came out yesterday, and hope you all are well, and I will talk to you soon. Okay, bye.